Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. The U.S. and Israel are turning up the heat on Hamas after a body sent back was not that of young mother Shiri Bibas. This was revealed through testing. After this latest broken promise from Hamas, one U.S. official is warning Hamas that they will face, quote, total annihilation. That's Adam Bullard, if they do not release all the hostages. And in response, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is calling for revenge. But even worse, Israeli officials say that that woman's two young children, ages 4 years and another only 10 months old, were brutally murdered by Hamas, not killed in an airstrike, as Hamas previously claimed. So what happens now? Here to weigh in, Deputy Special Envoy for the Middle East, Morgan Ortagus, and Israeli Special Ops veteran, Aaron Cohen. So Morgan, you have part of the pen on this now, and we are all outraged. All freedom-loving, humane, moral people are outraged to think that Shiri Bibas's body was so disfigured, or she was so brutally murdered that they could not possibly have returned her. And yet we know her 4-year-old and her 10-month-old babies were brutally murdered. And I'm glad we're showing pictures of them because people should know that this all has a consequence. Adam Bullard, with whom you and I had the privilege of serving in the first term, you're serving with him now, Special Envoy for Hostages. He has called for total annihilation if Hamas doesn't come clean on this. Please tell us what's happening tonight.
Well, I think Adam is echoing the threats of the President of the United States. And we've heard, of course, Mike Waltz, who's the National Security Advisor. He said very explicitly that Hamas cannot rule Gaza after all of this. But let's put in, for context for your viewers, what happened. And this is tough to hear on a Friday night. But remember, on October 7th, it wasn't just Hamas that came over that day. It was Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other terrorist groups. And then the final wave that came over that day were groups of Gazan civilians who took part in the kidnappings and some of the brutal atrocities that happened that day. So we saw this young woman, you know, it has haunted me, Kellyanne, for the past few nights. It's been hard for me to sleep because I have a young daughter, and I know every Jewish mom, every parent out there with young children, you just see the images of this frightened woman who went into Gaza, who was dragged there with her babies, came back in coffins. And let's not forget, the same civilians that were a part of coming over and bringing these people, these Israeli citizens back to Gaza, these same civilians were cheering in the images that we saw of the coffins of babies being taken back into Israeli custody. So that brings me, I think, to the most important point, that you have a depraved society here, a society that has to not only be demilitarized, but has to be de-radicalized. And that's why I think President Trump's comments with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu just a few weeks ago at the White House, the first head of state to visit the White House in Trump's second term, President Trump sent a very clear and strong signal about the de-radicalization that has to happen to this population. And if you didn't believe President Trump a few weeks ago, look at the image of the crowd clapping and cheering as babies go back in their coffins into Israel without their mother.
So Aaron Cohen, Morgan, of course, paints a very poignant and sadly true picture of the state of affairs. We'd like to hear from you.
So here's where I'm at with this, Kellyanne. It's good to be on with you. Hamas, as I see it, is the largest terror cartel in the world. We're talking about cartels these days. Let's call Hamas what it is, a terror cartel, and I'll explain it. Psychological warfare and fear are their main tool. And parading these hostage bodies, putting the wrong body in the bags, parading them around, putting them on this stage, it's designed to manipulate the media and break the grieving families in Israel to spread that fear. But here's the truth. Hamas isn't a government. They never were. They put themselves in like a cartel would. And they're the world's largest terror cartel. And they've lived in luxury for years. Billionaires using their own people as human shields. And they've laundered billions through fake charities, crypto scams, and state sponsors. And I'm going to say it. Qatar and Turkey, who's now housing the final leaders that we haven't killed yet. So what do you do with these criminals? You've got to dismantle them, and I agree with Morgan 100%. But here, you've got to cut off the cash, freeze these assets, shut down their fake charities, and sanction these enablers. Then you've got to finish off the leadership, Kellyanne. Hamas leaders aren't politicians. These are war criminals, and they need to be taken out or brought before the courts. Then you've got to take Gaza back, like she said. No more terrorist state. Demilitarize completely, de-radicalize completely, and remove Hamas permanently. And Qatar and Turkey need to start to be looked at more seriously. No more free pass. Cut Hamas off or pay the price. You just cannot negotiate with this group anymore. You need to bankrupt them completely.
And President Trump and Secretary of State Rubio, obviously Steve Witkoff, and of course Mike Waltz, all have weighed in on this recently. Vice President Vance, I think everybody's of a singular mind here. And let us not forget the human cost of Hamas's terror. We just saw this beautiful family. God rest their souls. Thank you so much for joining me.